for those that don't know, me and Tim go way back. 2009, I did the math on it. 16 years we've known each other.
Man, it's been a minute.
And aside from being the first guest, technically, you're also a co-host and my business partner in this endeavor, which I'm very appreciative of.
For sure.
So,
As am
I want to definitely get into your story because I think it's a brilliant one. The success that you've had in business, what you've been able to grow. I just think that can be very inspirational and helpful for other people.
Cool.
So, with that being said, I want to kind of just give a background as far as, taking it way back, where you were born, how was your life growing up, childhood?
Sure.
What was that like?
That was good. I'd like to thank you, and I'm interested in and excited to do this with you. So let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. All right. So childhood was good. I felt like I had a normal kind of desert life. Shot guns.
Yeah.
Played a lot of basketball. Rode my bike everywhere. Had good friends. Still have one of my business partner currently. I've known him since I was 2 years old. Went to the same preschool, and so yeah, I had a pretty good childhood. No complaints.
You grew up in Asperia, right?
I grew up in Asperia. Really riding our bikes all over the place. The desert back then was much smaller than it was now.
Yeah.
So, we had fields all over the place, empty fields all over the place that we could ride bikes. We could ride dirt bikes in my backyard, making jumps, shooting BB guns all over the place. Yeah, it was great.
Was Bear Valley Road developed when you were growing
It
up?
was like everything, all the structure, the main structures were all there.
Yeah.
The mall was built when I was young.
Right.
So we did have that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
When that went in,
Right.
there was like a Home Depot, and there was the hardware store.
Right.
I think there was at H&E actually. I don't think it was a Home Depot yet. I think it was
Really?
called H&E. Yeah, and it was where the old Kmart was on Main Street. So there was that. But the desert was great.
Yeah.
It was weird. When I was growing up in it, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was one of those things that everyone kind of talked down on. Oh, you live in the high desert. Basically a lot of people still do to this day.
100%.
But growing up there, looking back now living in LA, man, there's so many things that my kids now don't have that I did have that I really look back at and appreciate. Being able to have the freedom to go ride your bike, being able to, be able to bring guns out school and shoot outside.
Yeah.
And not doing anything malice, just having fun, and just being able to have that freedom.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, all the sports were pretty fun.
Right.
They had all the youth leagues and all that stuff.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Asperia High. Went to Asperia Junior High and Asperia High.
SAC.
And high school was a good experience. Yeah, played basketball, track, did high jump.
Were
I would say
you
pretty typical?
were you you a jock and a smart guy in the classroom, or mainly jock, or?
Definitely never was a smart guy
Okay.
in anything. I was like
I disagree, but okay.
lower in math and reading.
Okay.
For sure. I was like in reading, not English, in one of my years. I don't remember which
Sounds
one.
like me.
Yeah. And then same with math. Math was like, I was probably lower than most kids. And then I was more of like a C student. What I really realized is I just was a kid who did not apply myself. In all aspects.
Okay.
I would even say in sports, I didn't really apply myself. I played, I didn't really have a goal, or I didn't really have a structure of like how to practice or anything like this. I just kind of went through the motions, of everything. And yeah, definitely I wouldn't say I was popular. I would say I knew everyone and everyone kind of knew me.
Yeah.
But I was never really involved with any cliques.
Okay.
Everyone had their little cliques.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like always on the sideline. I was kind of like a floater.
Was your business partner the one that you grew up with? Was he?
He went to Apple.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't really. We would hang out on weekends, or like I would go over his house on. We would probably see each other maybe 5-6 times a year.
Yeah.
Not a whole bunch. We didn't really hang out a ton.
Right.
When we got out of high school, when we started having our driver's license and stuff like that, during high school, we would hang out more during that.
Right.
Because then we could actually drive to each other and chill.
Yeah.
But as far as like, I had other friends, that I would chill with when, more local friends, more Asperia friends.
Yeah.
But even then, man, I would mostly just hang out with one or two people.
Right.
I was never like, the football players had 5, 8, 10 group of friends, I would never did that.
Yeah.
I would go hang out with them for a day or, a few hours and then be like, all right, I'm gonna go see these guys, and then go hang out with the skaters and chill with those guys, and then go hang out with drama kids and be like,
So
oh,
you
y'all
didn't
weird.
discriminate. You were
No,
chilling
I
with
liked
everybody.
everything. I liked everybody.
Yeah,
You know,
I love that.
I enjoyed everybody. I enjoyed everybody for what they were.
Right.
But I never really was like a part of any of their groups where,
Right.
you know, they all knew each other's moms and, you
Yeah.
know, all that stuff. I was like, I don't know none of that stuff.
But you were welcome within each group.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, all the groups had great people.
Yeah.
People I really enjoyed talking to. But again, like, you know, I was more picky with who I wanted to hang out with
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Like, so I looked at me. I don't necessarily feel like I didn't fit in. I kind of feel like I fit in with each one, but I kind of feel like I didn't want to be just hanging out with this group all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? I like to be a little bit more of a
Diverse.
flirter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even to this day, man, I don't have many good friends.
Right.
You know, I have a very small circle that I really hang out with.
Yeah.
I have a lot of acquaintances.
Yeah.
But as far as close friends, I keep
Just me,
that.
right?
Yeah. I keep it super small, super tight. And, you know, people who have been there for a long time and people that I could trust, people that, you know, I could just talk to about anything.
Right.
These are the type of people I want in my life. People who are growing, people who aren't doing drugs, people who aren't, you know, just losers. I like hanging around people who really want to do things for their lives. Yeah. And, yeah, I've really been really good at that.
Yeah.
The second I've noticed someone, you know, it's sad because, you know, when I'd find out kids were doing, you know, coke or doing these different things,
Right.
I mean, I would just like one day we're good friends. The next day I'm like,
keep your distance.
Like I'm just backing off like crazy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even something I would even plan. It was just like internally, I'm just like, nope.
Did you just feel uncomfortable with that kind of setting?
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very, very uncomfortable.
So you never really experimented with any type of like drugs or anything like that?
No, you know, smoked weed and that's it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I was always been super against that.
Yeah.
It's just in my mind, I've always just, you know, I don't know how I was raised. I've never raised around any sort of drug use. And it just always screamed like, you know, death to me, you know, like, I was very scared of it.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I was also like, I always wanted to be something. I always wanted to do something.
Right.
You know, I always have very high energy. I always wanted to do stuff.
Yeah.
And the party lifestyle, drinking, my dad was an alcoholic. And so that was always very, very unattractive to me. So if I see people who are alcoholics or can't handle substances, it's just a very unattractive state. And that's for females or males. You know, if a friend of mine, if I see that state, I just kind of like, you know, he needs to get his stuff under control.
Right.
And maybe that's me being a bad friend and I could be better. I don't know. I just know me protecting myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to fall into any of those traps. And yeah, so that's kind of how I've done it.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I do it.
I'm curious. You mentioned that you kind of were like invested in sports and school. Like, where do you feel like your mind was at around that age? Like, what was your focus?
Man, it's tough because, you know, it's been a long time, you know, for one, but you know, but at the same time, it was probably, I don't know, you know, I don't know. I didn't really have a focus.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of just like, I knew I was always good at certain things. I was good at like building stuff,
Right.
you know, when I was young. I was always in wood shop all my life. So those classes I kind of excelled at.
Right.
You know, I was also good with people. Like my senior year, I was a TA for 6 of 7 classes.
Wow.
So I only had one class and I was just TAs for all the teachers. Or, you know, I was TA for the front office, TA for the cheerleaders, TA for like a math teacher, TA.
Wow.
You know, I was just TA for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like weaseled my way into little, you know, into little positions like with ASB or with the front desk where it's like, man, hey, I want to get out early.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a TA for the front desk and I get to know the people who check you in and out,
Right.
they could just be like, hey, I'm going to run to the store right quick. And they're just like, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, they trusted me and I trusted them, you know, so they would let me leave all the time. I could kind of have freedom to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And that would probably be like, when I look back, if I look at like ways that my mind has worked, I've kind of always looked for freedoms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't mean freedoms in like money or freedom. I just always have kind of wanted to do what I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I can't do what I want, then I'm usually not that happy.
Yeah.
I'm a very driven guy, so I always want to be working. I mean, I'm working like constantly.
Yeah.
But I also want to be working the things that I want to do.
Exactly.
You know, if I have to be somewhere because I have to day in and day out,
Right.
and I don't really have the freedom to say like, hey, you know, I can't do this or I can't do that. I'm probably not going to be at that position for very long.
Right.
You know, I'm going to change something up.
Do you feel like, when did you start getting that like entrepreneur mindset as far as like wanting to be your own boss? When did that start to like come to fruition for you?
At a pretty young age. I mean, you know, I had some pretty cool jobs when I was growing up. My first job was at Penguins selling ice cream at 16. That was fun, you know, but that was, you know, obviously a teenage job.
Yeah.
Then I did some small jobs that were ridiculous that, you know, I was like, I worked one day and I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm worth more than this. Even at 19 or 18, 17, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, I'm not doing this. I'm
Right,
worth more than this.
Yeah.
Then I was a traveling sales guy. You know, when I was 18, I would travel all of California, Vegas, and Vegas. And so it would be like San Diego all the way to San Francisco, Sacramento, and then to Vegas. So I'd travel that direction. And that was cool. Kind of got me out of the house and kind of got me out of my, you know, the HD.
Yeah.
And so I'd live in hotels and, you know, I'd do that and I'd be all by myself. So that was pretty interesting. So that kind of gave me a little bit of freedom to kind of do those things. But it sucked.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it definitely sucked. But then after that, I got a job installing DirecTV.
Okay.
And so that owner I was a subcontractor. So that was my first look of like, I had to open a company. It was called Digital Direct. And I opened a company and then I would go around and install DirecTV.
So that was your company?
That was my company.
Okay.
And then
Was
I
that
was
the
1099. Yeah. So that was my first company that I
Ever?
owned. Yeah, ever.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was 1099 from the owner of the satellite company. That's how most of the installers worked back then. And so you got paid basically per install. So it was basically piecework.
Okay.
So if I installed 3 a day or 1 a day, like I could be based on however many I installed.
Okay.
Right. And that was all over LA.
Okay.
So all at LA and Inland Empire.
Okay.
I mean, some in the high desert, but most of it, the company I worked for was in Rancho. So most of his business was Inland Empire to Diamond Bar. I mean, Orange County to LA County.
Right.
And I did that for a couple of years, and that was awesome, dude. Made six figures. Probably I don't know, maybe 6 months in, I started making about 6 figures.
Wow.
Working 6 days a week though, probably 12-hour days.
Damn.
I mean, I worked more than any of my friends ever worked. I was always working.
And how old were you when you started this company?
I was 19.
Wow.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay. So
19.
you didn't do college?
I never went to college.
What's
I
your
went one
opinion on it?
semester. I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I agree. And I have 2 MBAs.
Yeah.
And I fucking,
Yeah.
gosh, should have wasted. It was just a waste of money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I never saw the value in it, not for what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and not for, you know, I went for one semester, and I didn't even show up to any of those classes that first semester.
Yeah.
I signed up for it, and I was just like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
You know, I was done with school like sophomore year.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, straight up. I was like, I liked it going because I liked the high school experience.
Yeah.
You know, I liked going to prom. I liked going to basketball games. I liked doing these things. But going to class, it was for the birds for me.
Yeah.
But that's why, honestly, even with my kids, honestly, I think after 8th grade, to be honest, that's all the education they really need.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. I think
Yeah.
most of it's probably a waste of time. If you could read and do basic math, I mean,
You're straight.
you could pretty much figure it
You
out.
can get by.
Yeah, you can pretty much get it by.
Yeah.
And everything else is kind of fluff. I think right now the high school experience is important,
Yeah.
you know, and maturing with your friends and kind of developing those relationships.
Yeah.
I think that aspect is important. But as far as like what you learn, I mean, I ask my kids all the time, what'd you learn today? And they like nothing. Anything they do learn, they're going to forget.
Right.
I don't remember nothing I learned.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the small stuff that you do now that's repetitive that you learn,
Right.
you know, or that you know, end up knowing for long terms.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I didn't go to college, didn't like college, and started doing DirecTV for a while. And then a buddy of mine, we started doing, you know, he was doing flips. So I kind of got into that.
Okay.
And me and Brad, my business partner now,
Yeah.
we did one. I think it was maybe we were 21. And we did a flip, bought a house for 100. We put about, I don't know, maybe 30 grand into it, sold it for 200.
So your first flip was at 21 years old?
Yeah, first
Wow.
first flip was probably 20.
Okay.
And then that was with Derek, my friend Derek. We did one, and then I got a little bit of money from that.
Okay.
And then we didn't do that well on it. We made like 20 grand on it.
Okay.
But at the time was still pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And then me and Brad did one. We made like 70.
Nice.
So that was pretty nice. And Brad's great. He's a great business guy. I
Yeah.
mean, he's just amazing with numbers.
Yeah.
Really, really, really sharp with that. I mean, top notch. Better than, I mean, I've met a lot of people and he's way up there.
Right. Okay.
And so I'm very lucky to have him. And so anyways, we did a flip and that was pretty cool. We got a little bit of money. And this is one of my coolest stories.
Okay.
So I got to tell you this.
Yes.
So what we did was we're on the golf course.
Okay.
And we're talking about like, okay, we just did this flip. What do we want to do?
Real quick though, where were we at? High desert, down the hill.
We're in the high desert.
Okay.
Yeah, high desert. So this is one of the coolest things. So we're on the golf course and we're like, or no. So we bought a piece of property.
Okay.
So we took that money that we made. We had about $53,000.
Okay.
I mean, we probably had about 70 grand actually.
Okay.
But we took 53,000 and we bought a piece of property in Victorville, just vacant land. But I think it was a half acre, maybe an acre. And we bought this property, but we didn't have no money. We thought we were going to go get a loan to build this house.
Right.
We really had no credit history, and we really had no way of like getting funds to build this house. And so we had about 20 grand, additional on of what we had left from, our investment that we made previous. So we have about 20 grand. We bought the property for 53, and we're like, okay, how are we going to build this thing? So I was doing digital direct at the time.
Okay.
And he worked for a property management company. And we were talking and we're just like, hey, I got a credit card with $23,000 on it. And he goes, yeah, I got a credit card with like 15 or 20 grand on it. And I'm like, it'd be interesting. Why don't we go home and we see how much money we can get for credit cards? So we both went home. We both applied for as many credit cards as we could that night.
Oh, damn. Okay.
By the end of that night, we had about, or, maybe by the next day or whenever we got the approval, we had about $150,000
Wow.
of available credit at 0% interest.
For how long?
For a year, 12 months.
Wow.
And we built that entire house interest free. And we built it and sold it within that year.
Wow.
And I think we were in it like right at 200 and we sold it for maybe a little bit more, maybe 250. And we sold it for 375.
You guys paid off the cards after?
Paid off all the
just took
cards,
profit?
took all the profit.
Wow.
It was one of the sickest things we've ever done.
Did you guys ever use that tactic again?
No, we did not.
Any reason why?
Yeah, like right after we paid it off, literally the week we were going to pay it off, we both started getting letters from the credit card companies because all of our other balances were so high.
Yeah.
They were saying like, whoa,
Yeah.
we're going to cancel those terms.
Damn.
And then some of them, the 12 months term was coming up. So they were kind of like, it's about to pay up, and we were using credit cards to like cash advances and shit like that to make payment, on other credit cards. And they kind of got savvy to that.
Right.
And so, but I mean, at the end of the day, it worked out.
So you guys took advantage of that, and then that kind of just gave you the cushion you needed for future projects, right? Like,
It did, yeah.
Yeah. So it gave you the capital that you needed to be able to just fund.
Yeah. So we started. So then Brad ended up going the route of getting a real estate license, and then I went and got the route of getting my contractor license.
Okay.
So I had a bunch of people asking me, hey, can you help me build houses? Can you help me do this? Can you help me do that? So we necessarily didn't go separate, but we kind of did.
Okay.
Shortly after that, Brad entered the military, and I stayed and continued to build. And then he, did the military thing, and then so we kept doing that. But and then I kept building houses and going pretty crazy with building houses all over the desert. And then basically we got to a point where, we were doing, everything was good. I would be building houses for other people and stuff like that. Then 2008 happened, and, that's when construction really slowed down.
Yeah.
So.
And that's when you, 2009, I think, was when you got the gyms, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For those
so
that don't know, he also owned 2 gyms at one point.
Yeah, I've owned a lot of companies.
Which
a lot
that's
of
how we met.
Yes.
I worked for you through Evan.
Yes.
We met a mutual friend, and you gave me a chance, and I worked for you. But then we ended up just blossoming into a friendship too, as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
You were the coolest boss I had, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you.
Totally.
Thank you.
The best in the world.
Appreciate it.
And one thing I did want to ask though, like with you becoming a GC. You said you started what was it called?
Digital Direct.
Digital Direct. And that was what kind of installs again?
DirecTV.
Okay. So before that, you had no construction background or anything like that?
No, that first house that we built, I mean, we literally went to the Home Depot and bought books that said how to wire a house straight up. I think I still have the book.
No way.
And that's how we wired the house.
So you weren't a GC at that point?
I was not. We built owner builder.
Wow. Okay.
So we got our permits through owner builder.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I mean, on that house in particular, I mean, I did all the grading.
Yeah.
We did hire a concrete company for that one. We did all the framing. We did the roofing.
Yeah.
We didn't do the drywall. We did the electrical. We did the plumbing. We didn't do HVAC. We painted it, did the tile.
Yeah.
Hired different subs for the stucco. So there's a lot of aspects we subbed out, but a lot of things we did are in-house. And I mean, literally with like me and two other guys, we had some friends that came by who kind of like, hey, do you know how to frame? Or do you know how to do this? Do you got a nail gun? And you know, they would just come over and for like a couple of days, show us how to do it.
Yeah.
Start build.
Wow.
And that's how we basically built it.
Is that where you feel like you got the itch or the bug for contracting?
Oh, definitely.
And that experience.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I mean, it was one of those things that's where I always, I took woodshop throughout my whole life. And I always, before that, I was always pretty handy in the house, pretty handy in the garage and, you know, and all those things. But when I built that house, I really realized I was very handy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, again, I think that's a talent that, you know, God gave me for sure.
Right.
That's one of those things that I kind of can't take much credit for.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it was always kind of came a little bit easier to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing but thankness.
Yeah.
Thank God for that.
For sure.
That helped a lot.
And so, you know, you get your GC's license. Is this when you started Clearview Builders?
Yeah, shortly after that. In 2006, we started Clearview Builders.
Okay. And then kind of take me through, like, obviously, I know you did residential, right? Can you kind of like talk about some of those experiences as far as what you were doing?
Sure. Yeah. But mostly we were, you know, they would hire me, and we would basically build the whole house.
Okay.
So I built for some other builders.
Mm-hmm.
So they would hire me and say, hey, I got these 2 houses out in Phelan. Can you build those for me? Can you GC them?
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And that would just run subs. And anytime I've noticed, man, anytime I've had to run subs in my career, I never, like an entire project.
Yeah.
I never really succeeded in that way. And
why?
I don't really know why. I have no idea. I've always succeeded when I have a crew and I run that crew and we kind of just build it at my pace.
Do you feel like that's because you just, you know, obviously with you running your own crew, they're taking direction from you, right? Whereas the subs, it's like you're kind of like trusting their quality of work or whatever.
Yeah. And I also, like, I never was able to charge the rates. So like if you have a sub, you know, that owner's going to take, you have a sub, that owner's going to take 20%.
Yeah.
And then that next trade, that owner's going to take 20%. And then the next trade, that owner's going to take 20%. So you have all of this money out on the table
that you're losing.
And so at the end of the day, like that house might cost, I don't know, it cost 20% more overall than it would have if I would have controlled those trades. Yeah. And by the time you add all those 20% up, there's no really more room for that GC. And I was so young, it was hard for me. Like part of my draw for these clients where I was cheap.
Yeah.
Because I was young and kind of hungry and willing to do things for relatively cheap.
Okay.
And when I subbed it out, I really never made any money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they were kind of like the subs were taking all the money.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I was kind of like,
yeah,
I was staying busy, but I wasn't making any money.
Got you.
But when I was able to take away those trades and do it in house, now all of a sudden I'm pulling that money, that 20%, and I'm actually able to make that. And at that point, I'm like, I could be pretty successful.
And how did you accomplish that? How were you able to eliminate the subs from the...
By learning all the trades.
So you just had to put in the work and learn it.
Yeah. So I learned plumbing, I learned framing, I learned all the different trades. And now we could do everything. Yeah. I mean, literally everything.
Right.
Like it's pretty cool.
How long did it take you to go, like for an up and coming GC, like what advice would you give them as far as trying to get to that point, what you did?
The biggest thing is don't be scared. Like most people are honestly scared to do different trades. So they're also scared. I mean, but some people just don't like, if you're a framer and you're scared of plumbing, which most are, or vice versa, it's just like, that's not my thing. You have to learn a whole new set of tools, have a whole new set of tools. You have the whole new trade, all the rules and the regulations for that. So there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I've always just been kind of like, again, I'm more of a jack of all trades than, I'm one of those like good at everything, not great at anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? So but I would rather be that.
Yeah.
I don't like doing the same thing day in and day out. I would like one day we're doing tile, the next day we're doing framing, the next day we're doing, you name it.
Right.
We're building something. I just like building.
Yeah.
And I kind of will build anything.
Right. Right.
Like, we've built furniture. That was fun.
Wow.
We've built, super high-end houses.
Yeah.
We've built, glass railings.
Yeah.
We built all kinds of very cool things.
Yeah.
Spiral staircases.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know I'm talking about, we actually built them. Like,
Right.
didn't actually,
Like custom builds. Yeah.
didn't hire something.
Wow.
Like, or not just a kit you buy.
Yeah.
Like, we had to like figure out how to build this.
Wow.
And we built it.
Yeah.
And that's really fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
Now, let me ask you this too. Is there anything, especially for people that are trying to accomplish what you've accomplished, which is grow your construction company into a multi-million-dollar business, be the success that it is, and also you're now in the industrial world, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you've left the residential and now you're just doing industrial work.
Right.
We'll get more into that a little bit later, but I just want to ask, like, were there any major failures or setbacks early in your career that you feel, transcended you to the next level?
Right.
Or helped you evolve?
Absolutely. I mean, there was some huge ones. So in the crash of '08, the real estate crash, I over leveraged myself. Again, and kind of everyone does in an extent. You kind of have to in business. You kind of have to, you have to be where people owe you money, whatever that would mean.
The payables or whatever?
Yeah. So, a bunch of people owed me money. And then when '08 happened, they weren't paying.
Oof, yikes.
So, and then I saw this happening, right? I saw the real estate market kind of crashing.
Yeah.
And when that happens, obviously builders crash.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I was kind of like, I'm going to transition. So, and I was a gym guy, so I always involved with the gym.
Yeah.
Even me and you were working out together.
Of course, yeah.
And then when that happened, I was like, I got this opportunity first I started with a personal training company. And so that personal training company started doing well. And I had the exclusive contract to do in Snap Fitness, just the personal training.
Really?
So that's how I got into Snap Fitness.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So that was the first way I got in there.
Okay.
So then we started hiring trainers.
Right.
And then as that went on, I got approached by the owner because the gym wasn't doing that well. And so after that happened, they approached me and they said, "Hey, do you want to buy the gyms?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is pretty awesome." So I invested about $100,000 that I had. I even got a loan from my parents.
Wow.
Like, I can't remember how much, but it was about 40 grand.
Okay.
And yeah, so they hooked me up with that. And they trusted me enough to say, like, this is good. I showed them everything that was about.
Yeah.
And then, so we went into the gym, and this was just for working capital. We didn't really need it at the time. I was just wondering to see if I needed money for payrolls or whatever,
Right.
I had money, available.
Yeah.
And I also had a bunch of construction jobs that were paying really well at the time.
Okay. Awesome.
So I was kind of like, I can make my nut of whatever I'm lacking in the gyms. I can make that in construction and keep that going. And then what my goal was to really just flip the gyms around, get the debt down, and then, let them start to be profitable. So all that was happening, going really well for a while. And then it just started to get, there's a bunch of problems with leases were horrible. I was very green on like all of that type of rental space. Yeah. And, I saw the total number. It was $44,000 a month we had to come up with. So it was a huge nut. And we were making about 20,000 in memberships.
Net
but
or
the
gross?
declines, no, this is gross. So we had 44,000 with no profit.
Damn.
That was how much it cost to run both those things.
Yeah.
And so we were making about 20 to 30,000 in profit. In gross a month. But I always had to come up with $6 grand, $7 grand, 10 grand, all these numbers just to make even. Right. And so, and then the training was making around $7 to $8 grand consistently. So that wasn't including training.
Okay.
Right. So that training went directly towards that.
Okay.
So again, we were getting close. So in construction, I only had to come up with maybe like $5,000, $4,000, $3,000 to make our even point. Right. Okay. And so that wasn't that bad, you know, so I can always make that pretty easily.
Right.
So, and with the training, so we're basically breaking even for a relatively while, basically the whole length of time that I owned them.
Yeah.
And then, but again, like I didn't really, so I saw that 44 grand and it was doable. Mm-hmm. But then when I look back at like what the leases were signed for, mm-hmm. at, you know, I think there was like $2.50 a square foot. One lease was like $13,000 a month. The other lease was $10,000 a month. And those were just, and then you had equipment leases and it was a franchise fees. And, and so I was just so green on just like, I could do it. Yeah. Not realizing like, man, this number is way too high. Right. Even if I start making money, there's a balance per square foot. Mm-hmm. So like we had 1,000 square foot gym. And we would want it at our Hesperia location. We needed 1,000 members for that gym to actually make money. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. So at 1,000 members, we started making money. But the problem is the second we hit 1,000, all the clients were complaining it was too crowded.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was like a max number of like capacity for that space was probably around 700. But at 700, we weren't making any money. Right. Right. So the whole thing didn't make sense. Yeah. Because the second we got to 1,000, which we did, which was pretty awesome.
You started losing members.
Everyone was like, this sucks. Yeah. All the current members were out of there. I mean, there were lines just to get on flat bench or, you know, whatever it was. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was just, and 5 o'clock, it was a wrap. Yeah. And then we are also an all access gym. So you swipe a card and you just walk in, kind of like an Anytime Fitness type of business model. So while that happened, people would start bringing friends in, people sneaking people in. Yeah. So it'd even be even more crowded. Yeah. You know, gyms survive on people that don't show up. Exactly. You know, that's just how gyms survive. Right. You know, if all the people who showed up, it's like this situation that you can't make money because everyone's going to complain and it's just not going to be sustainable. Right. So, you know, that was the magic number for the Hesperia location. The Apple Valley location was a really struggling gym. That's the Hesperia location actually made money. Okay. The Apple Valley location lost money every month, and big money. Yeah. And then the problem with that was the owners of that were so upside down in their building that they had to keep those rents high to keep their mortgage and their leases up with their mortgage company. So they couldn't lower theirs. Yeah. So there was a whole, you know, it just went down the chain. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah. And then I got to a point where I just, you know, I was doing construction, trying to run these gyms, trying to run the personal training company, doing all these things all at the same time. And then I had a client who owed me a bunch of money in construction. Oh. And I was warned, don't work with him. And I did. And basically he didn't pay me. And from that on, I wasn't able to make that payment, and this payment, and that payment. And then before you know it, we had to sell them. So we sold them both to the Apple Valley owner. Okay.
I remember too, actually, because I worked at both locations, and the Apple Valley one was definitely much slower than Hesperia location. The Hesperia had a lot more foot traffic. Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. But the Apple Valley one was a larger location. It was way cooler. I liked it there better. Me too. Yeah, it was a really nice location.
Like I would, when I was working out there too, I would rather work out at the Apple Valley.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Hesperia was much smaller and it was more condensed, but like I said, it's just more traffic.
Right.
And I think maybe, do you feel like the locations, because you know how they say in business is location, 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 right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the franchise thing is for the birds. I think that's not good. Yeah. Especially the way that one is structured. Right. And I think that's probably why that franchise probably hasn't had the success like in Anytime. I mean, even Anytime is very similar structured. Yeah. But really, those franchises are structured where they extrapolate as much money from these business owners as possible. Right. So they're making money on the leasing of the equipment. They're making money on the leasing of the name, the licensing of the name. There's so many different aspects down on all the marketing materials. Right. They make money all the way down the chain. Yeah. And the person who's making the least amount of money is the owners of these franchises. Yeah. And so I would never do a franchise like that again. I mean, or if I did a franchise, I'd have to do way more research. Yeah. But, you know, I was like 28 at the time. Right. So I was pretty ignorant to a lot of this stuff, and but learned a lot of lessons from it.
Yeah.
If I would have do it again, I would have kept the Hesperia one and just let the Apple Valley one sue me, and then let that one go. And I think we could have like worked something out in that regard.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of stuff kind of behind the scenes, and it just made a little bit moral sense to me to like just give them both up.
Yeah.
And so I just felt that was the better move for me.
Right.
And then and that's what actually once that closed down, I was kind of like nothing was holding me back.
Yeah.
Up in the high desert.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a little bit of embarrassment.
In what regard? Just because it failed?
Yeah, a little bit.
Or whatever?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And also like I was like, the construction was so slow. I wasn't getting anywhere up there.
Yeah.
And so that's when I moved to LA.
Right.
And then I was just a personal trainer for a little bit.
What year was that when you moved to LA?
2010.
Okay. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, when did we go shooting that one time?
I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I was like, when did this picture happen?
Maybe you just came and visited.
Probably.
Or something like that? Yeah. Okay.
Probably.
Yeah. Because I was like, I feel like you were like, I feel like we were still in each other's lives until about,
right.
2012.
Maybe, yeah.
2010. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah.
My memory's shot, anyways. But
yeah,
it is what it is.
No, I agree.
I do want to ask you this though, because I want to focus in on the business side because, like I said, you've been able to. I mean, these are just like old businesses and situations. Like this has no reflection of the success that you have currently with your company.
True.
And what you've been able to build. But I want to ask, at any point in your time or any point in time in your life, did you have any mentors or role models that really stick out for you that you feel like were a catalyst or they helped you find the success that you found?
I don't know if it's necessarily role models. There's definitely people that that I looked up to.
Okay.
I wanted like water though. But I know it's okay.
One. I can
Probably should. My throat's getting
I got
itchy. Maybe we should. Yeah.
Everything's real and authentic, real time.
We need to be prepared for this. This is like I'm talking a lot, and I was like, man, I've never really get my voice scratchy like this.
One more just in case for you, just in case.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so as far as those mentors, speak on that.
Yeah, so I think I had a gentleman named Kip Richmond. I really looked up to him. He was a good friend of mine.
Okay.
And he built a lot of houses up there. He built like Quill Valley Estates and a lot of houses in Upper Valley. He probably built, I don't know, probably 2,000 homes up there.
Okay.
And so he ended up being a good friend of mine. And I definitely looked up to him. He helped me a lot. I went to him for advice a lot. But that was also closer to, that's not like early on my construction.
Right.
Early on, it was mostly self-taught.
Really?
Mostly self-taught on how to do everything.
But how? What mediums were you using to teach yourself? Books
And just
videos?
doing it.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, you're gonna tile something. It's just doing it.
But that true. Like, I guess I would be so nervous for the fact that like there's obviously a cost associated with this project, right? You have to buy the materials, all that stuff. So I'd be so fearful of like screwing it up and like messing up that material.
Yeah, I've never really been scared of it. I've always been just like, okay, once you learn how to do it and it makes sense, I can kind of like figure out how like, I mean, back then it was more books than anything. There was no really social media or anything like that. I mean, there was the internet, so you could look up stuff on that. But even then, it was kind of like just mostly looking at books and just or talking to people who have kind of done it.
Yeah.
Be like, I mean, I remember not even knowing like when you're mixing like a thin set for a tile, like I didn't even know what consistency the mud's supposed to look like.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So like thinking like or even drywall mixture, like is this supposed to be thicker? Is it supposed to be thinner? Like what consistency is this supposed to be at, you know? And so, you know, that was a big question, you know, and then like what size trowel to use and what size this. But, you know, if you ask people in the trade or you ask people at the supply houses, I mean, most of the time people are pretty helpful, you know, they're pretty helpful. And, you just come in humble and you look at it and, you know, and if you check on it the next day, you knock on the tile and it's like, okay, it's solid. You pass your inspections. Okay. You pass my inspections. You know, the electricity works. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I did it. I guess this is how you do it.
It's okay.
But, you know, back when I was really big in gym, you know, so, I mean, a lot of my role models were like Arnold and, you know, those type of guys and where it was like really working, like working hard,
Put in the work.
put in the work. Yeah. So that was one of my biggest role models. Is that I can remember, would be Arnold and, just reading all his books, just watching anything he was really involved with. Never really was like a huge Arnold movie star fan, but just his bodybuilder, persona, larger than life, pumping iron, all that type of stuff was really impressive to me. You know, and then, you know, the stuff later in life, kind of a major disappointment, but
In what sense?
I'm just not an Arnold fan anymore.
Was there anything that happened that caused that?
I've met him a few times at Gold's in Venice.
Oh yeah, I remember you told me.
So I've met him a few times there. Not impressed. Not impressed the way he treats people that I see him just interact with.
What was kind of the experience you saw or witnessed?
You know, saw this. You know, there's a lot of foreigners. That come over to the gym, and I saw a group of like these 3 German dudes, and Arnold's working out. You know, he's doing his thing, and he's Arnold. And there's a lot of tourists that come in and they would give a tour where they would actually just be able to walk through the gym, right? You could just walk to the back and walk to the front.
Okay.
Like, you know, because this is the mecca of bodybuilding, right?
Right.
So Arnold's working out, and I worked out there for about 10 years. And so I knew a lot of people over there, and again, would see Arnold all the time. And he was very courteous and talkative to like his group. Like, I mean, no knock on that. And I get like, hey, people don't want to be bothered and all this other stuff. So this guy, these 2 young kids, they're probably 3 of them, probably like in their early 20s. They come by and one of them just kind of like picks up his camera and like starts like recording the area that Arnold's in, right? But obviously he's there to like kind of record Arnold a little bit. And Arnold's doing his set, and these kids are not like focusing in on him or anything like that. And Arnold jumps out of his seat and gets in this guy's face and just starts screaming at him.
What?
Don't record me. How dare you record me and all this other stuff. And I was really stepped back and I was just like, bro, like this is just.
You think you'd be used to it?
Yeah, but it was so aggressive. And this kid is obviously a major fan.
Right.
A major fan of yours. Which everybody, like, bro, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Like, bro, everybody, and you're in the gym. Like, probably just.
Like a dream come true for some kid.
Bro.
Yeah.
Super dream come true. I mean, it was a dream come true when I saw him. And just seeing that guy is like, you know, it's something you just grew up idolizing, right?
Yeah.
And then I just saw that and I really just stepped back. You know, they always say, don't ever meet your heroes because they'll always let you down. And he's one that definitely let me down. You know, the only thing with him is like, I could recognize like early in his life, I could take the good from him.
Yeah.
And, you know, he made some really good points. I think he did whatever was necessary to become the superstar that he became.
Right.
So at that point, I really hated when he said F your freedoms during COVID. I think you ran California shitty.
Yeah.
You know, and all these things I kind of more recognized as an adult.
Right.
You know what I mean? And really seeing like the type of man he really was. I don't think he's a man of really of principles, you know, and back then I was like, he's more of a man who's like self-driven. He's going to get to wherever he wants, no matter what.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of those people out there.
Yeah.
That's not the position I ever really want to be in. If I'm going to get somewhere, I want it to be earned and I want it to be principled.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take advantage of somebody or I'm going to F someone over, I think a good deal is not a good deal where I win, you lose.
Right.
A good deal is you win, I win, so we can continue to win together.
Exactly.
And and I think his generation was, or his, you know, his mentality was,
I'm going to get mine.
I'm going to get mine, and if you don't get yours, that's on you. I'm going to take advantage of you. I'm going to exploit you. I'm going to get what I want out of you, and I'm going to win. And when I'm done winning,
And
I don't give two shits about
I
you.
think you see that too, even in his demeanor in the Pumping Iron documentary.
Oh,
He
1,000%.
was. You saw the mind games he played with Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, Lou Ferrigno, Franco, all of them.
Yeah, like he knew what he was doing, you know, and
Yeah.
he knew the power that he had and whatnot. So.
I do think even in that, I mean, I think the producers and stuff turned all that up.
Okay.
I think he turned it up. You know, he wanted to pretend to play a character in that.
True.
And you know, so again, like you can't always believe everything. It wasn't a true documentary.
Yeah.
Those things are like docudramas.
Right.
So they created Arnold to be the villain, Lou to be the victim.
Yeah.
You know, and the kind of like the deaf, like almost, the deaf weak man.
Yeah.
You know, the guy working out in the dungeon in New York, and then Arnold's here in California, and just with all the, you know, the good looks and the girls and the, you know, all the friends and all that stuff. And Lou's out there with his dad just grinding.
Yeah, pumping.
So, you know, they portrayed that. I think there was, you know, maybe a hint of truth in there about what that in real life.
Yeah.
The reality was probably a lot different than just that. You know what I mean? But yeah, you know, Arnold was definitely a big influence just on all the articles I'd look up, you know, and everything like that. That was something I really, really aspired to be. And I don't regret that because I think he did instill a lot of really good, like, work ethic type stuff in, like, you know, the way he wrote and or people wrote about him and maybe he talked. So, you know, real or fake, if you could take the good of, even if it's fake, shoot. And it works for you, take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Take it.
Yeah.
But, so he would definitely be one. I had a guy named Danny Brown. He lived in New York.
Okay.
He came here as a Trinidad immigrant. Yeah, you met him.
Yeah, the one when we went to New York.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
got you. He was a bodybuilder too, right?
A bodybuilder as well. Yep. And he was in his 70s. He's in his 80s now. And he was definitely a big role model for me. I really, really enjoyed him. He came here. Awesome story. He came here from Trinidad with no money.
Wow.
He was a personal trainer for a long time in New York City. And he wanted to be the bodybuilder. Just never worked out. He just spent more time training than he did actually working on his physique. I mean, he was always jacked, but and he also didn't want to do gear. So that was a big thing for him. You know, he was a huge natural, but you know, he wasn't big in the steroids. So he just wasn't doing that.
And by gear, you mean steroids. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, he's saved up a ton of money, lived in a 12 by 12 apartment for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Got this, saved up enough money to buy the gym from the owner.
Oh, wow.
And then the right when he had enough money to buy the gym, the owner goes, "Sorry, we're closing down."
Wow.
And you can't buy it.
Why?
It was some like city issue
Oh, okay.
for what they were going to do with that building. So he was like, "Dang it." So he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what he did was he trained all stockbrokers.
Oh.
So that was where most of his money came
Man,
from.
that's smart, Loki.
That's where all of his clientele came from, right?
Yeah.
So, and he's this huge black dude,
Right.
you know, jacked
Yeah.
and super awesome personality.
Yeah.
And so they're telling him, like, all the stockbroker guys were like, "Hey, why don't you work as my limousine driver? Take that money that you were going to go buy the gyms with, go buy a limousine, and I'll let you drive for me at like $200 an hour or whatever it was." So he was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So he went and bought a limo, started driving all the stockbrokers around.
Wow.
And so he opened a limo company and he started doing that. Well, in that, he would start, you know, he's making some good money, super frugal, staying in this little 12 by 12 apartment, renting a garage just to park the limo.
Wow.
And then the stockbrokers would just give him a bunch of advice on where to put your money.
Wow.
And, you know, to this day, I think he owns like 9 or 10 buildings
Wow.
in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, which is like, right now, it's like the most poppin' place of all of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so he has a bunch of places there. I think he has like 32 doors, like 9 actual buildings, all paid off.
Damn.
Yeah, did short-term rentals, does long-term rentals, does all kinds of stuff.
I did not know
And
he was
so,
doing all that.
oh, he balling.
Damn.
Yeah, he's balling. And, you know, he's in his 80s now, still in good shape.
Yeah.
You know, still,
That's wild.
still.
When we went, he was like in his 60s, right? I think.
Yeah, well, I think early 70s.
And he was still freaking jacked.
Oh, bro.
I remember seeing him. I was like, holy crap. He's
Yeah.
a big guy.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Sebastian went, I think, in 2018.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went.
You saw him?
Yeah, we saw him. Yeah, I hung out with
doing
him.
good?
He's doing great. Yeah,
Healthy?
yeah. Sebastian met him, my son, and yeah, he's healthy and
That's awesome.
he's great.
I had no idea he owned buildings. Like I remember
bro.
going to his brownstone.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, because you remember.
Well, when I say buildings, I mean I don't mean like skyscrapers. I mean like
Right,
buildings
right.
like
Yeah,
you know
like rentals.
rentals. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like you know
But
I
it's
think.
still really expensive in New York. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean they have restaurants in the lower section,
wow.
and then you know it's kind of like either a live work or a commercial residential. And so yeah, he had restaurants below. He had coffee shops down below. He had and like that building would have like a coffee shop and then like 5 units above.
Wow. Family? Does he have any kids or anything?
No kids, but he had like a sister and a family in Trinidad. So he would go back to Trinidad. I know he built a house pretty recently, probably in the last 10 years, like a big old house in Trinidad.
Okay.
And his family stays at that.
Oh,
and,
that's so dope.
he really takes care of all of them.
That's so awesome, man.
But he was a huge mentor of mine.
Yeah.
He would be one of those I'd call and discuss like I'm thinking about this deal or that deal, and he would kind of help me out.
Yeah.
And the thing I loved about him is he was uber successful, and he never really cared about money.
Yeah.
And that's
You
really
got that sense from him.
that's my favorite part about him.
Yeah.
He never really gave two shits about money.
Yeah.
It was all about the freedom that money gave him,
Right.
and he was just a very humble, very gracious, generous man, and everyone he talked to. We would drive through the streets of New York in a convertible 1965 Mustang, and bro, everywhere we went, people were like, Danny Brown, and he's just like, what's up, baby? What's up, baby? What's up, baby? It was super cool, man. People with Lambos and Ferraris would pull up next to him. And because this is New York, you're driving a California car.
Yeah.
And they'd pull up next to him and they'd be like, what year is that?
Yeah.
And, oh, 65. And so they would be like, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so he would get more props than the guys in the Ferraris.
I bet.
It was super interesting. And then he was just an awesome guy.
Yeah.
So it was just, he made my New York experiences like that. He is why, the city of New York is wild, and it's a beautiful city. And it's one of my favorite cities.
Yeah.
But I would have never had the experience I've had in New York without meeting Danny Brown.
Yeah.
Danny Brown is definitely one of the
Yeah.
goats of my life,
Yeah.
for
That's
sure.
dope, man.
He's a great guy.
And you know what? Honestly,
That's awesome. You got to meet him.
I know,
Actually,
I'm actually
I
very
don't really
thankful.
give that enough credit. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was cool, man. Because he was like, to speak on your point about him not caring about money.
Yeah.
Man, that is so true, because I never got a sense that he was like,
Oh, no.
like that.
Ripped jackets, old clothes.
I thought he was like, okay, this guy's like living on Social Security or something like
Right,
that.
right.
And to know now that he owns 9 buildings, bro,
Yeah.
like, but that goes to me, like, I feel like when you've really truly found success, you can tell the guys that really got it from the guys that are pretending.
Oh, for sure.
Because you'll see billionaires walking around in flip flops, Target attire, and then you see these millionaires that like barely made it, whatever, and they were flaunting the Lambos and the Versace and all that
Most
stuff.
of the time they're broke, right?
And they're like leveraging everything. To keep this appearance going. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm trying to be the guy in flip flops.
Yes.
You know what I mean, I don't care about the Versace. I want flip flops,
Yes.
and just to know I can, I'm good for the rest of my life.
Yes.
You know what I mean, now speaking of that, I want to take it back because I feel like there's just a wealth of knowledge with your experience, especially what you've been able to build with Clearview Builders now, and the fact that you're in the industrial realm. What I want to ask first though was, what were some of the biggest, and the reason why I'm asking these questions is, for anyone that's watching that is maybe in the same field as you, or just to be able to take some knowledge from the experience that you had and apply it to their life, especially if they're an entrepreneur or a business owner. But I want to see, what were the biggest sacrifices you had to make early on that most people don't see?
Honestly, it's hours worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would be working all the time.
Yeah.
And even now, I would just work all the time.
Yeah.
My partner calls me at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, all the time. We talk all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just constantly working.
Right.
What else am I going to do though?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, yes, I still, whether I'm spending time with the family or I'm at the gym or I'm, whatever it is, you name it. If we have a question about work, we handle it. We kind of deal with it when it comes. And there's just never a moment where we're kind of like, you can just zone out and not really think about it.
Right.
There's always something to do, always something going on. Our phone or email or text or something.
Yeah.
There's something happening all the time.
Yeah.
and just kind of like just making that the norm.
Right.
You know, my wife now, I mean, it's definitely a different change of pace for her because she's never really been around anybody that is probably as busy as I am.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a change of pace because but that's one thing that I really love and appreciate about her is she's been able to help balance me.
Yeah.
Because without her, man, I would just be going. And she really helps me like to slow down.
Right.
You know, especially at this stage of my life, I really need to like take a breath.
Yeah.
Slow down. And even then, I mean, I speed her up a lot, so it's hard for me to slow down. But at the same time, she helps with that.
They say behind every great man is a great woman rolling her eyes.
Absolutely.
Shout out Angie, by the way.
Yeah, no, she's a rock star.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I would say, but sacrifices is just hours worked.
Okay.
But work
do you
a
feel
lot
like
of hours.
Did you feel like you sacrificed like family time?
I don't
friendships?
really feel like I sacrificed anything. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I kind of just did that.
Did the family have any issues with it though?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, my family?
Yeah.
No.
They weren't ever like, you're not home a lot or anything like that.
No, I mean, I've always, I've had basically custody of my son most of his life.
Yeah.
We've had shared custody, but even then I've had probably majority custody. And I've always been, I felt like a great dad to him.
Yeah.
And
amazing father for sure.
And so I've always made time for him.
Yeah.
But it would be one of those things he would just come with.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's just better example for him than anything.
100%.
Like, hey, you're gonna go on these cool job sites.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're just, doing small stuff. I mean, this is some cool stuff.
Yeah.
We're building a $10 million home in like Emerald Bay.
Yeah.
Like, and I get to bring him into this like private community and showing him like all these cool faucets and cool staircases and all this other stuff. It's not like it's like I'm taking him to a little office and he's watching me just on the computer and I'm telling him to go.
He's getting a chance to see things.
He's seeing things and he's seeing workers and he's seeing me work with, communicate with clients, communicate with employees, he may communicate with subs, city officials, all these different things. He gets to kind of observe all those things, And so as far as sacrifice, again, like, I don't think so. I think that's all been a benefit.
Yeah.
I agree. And it's also something like this is what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So I've tried to get out of this a lot of times, construction, any business, anything you do. If there's days NBA players wake up and they're like, I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. It's the same with anything.
Right.
And the same with this. Like, there's been seasons in my life where I'm like, man, I want to get out of this. I want to do a different season of something. I want to, change up. But then I always look back. Anytime I'm actually in a good project and a fun project, I always look around and I'm like,
this is dope.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so God has really blessed me with that, that ability to kind of look around and really just appreciate the gifts that he's given me. Yeah. And, and then another thing with my wife, she's really, ever since I got with her, I definitely have become much more religious. I kind of grew up as a Christian, but me and her our walk with God has really improved.
Yeah.
And that's been probably one of my biggest changes ever since I really gave my life to him again.
Yeah.
My life really has skyrocketed. I would say that's probably been the major change and shift in role model. Yeah. Not only in how I look at people, how I, just communicate and navigate the world has really been like, I'm trying to be more God focused.
Yeah.
I lived a man of the world for a long time, especially before I met her. And especially from 2010 to about 2020.
Yeah.
But those 10 years, I would say were probably my roughest years for sure. And then really dedicated my life back to God has really, ever since then, it's really allowed me to get better balance and focus on the real things in life.
The important stuff.
Yeah, the important stuff, right.
I think that's, obviously we live in a world nowadays where it's like everyone has like their higher power.
Right.
We obviously share the same faith and belief.
Right.
As far as having him in your life, I know for me personally, when I look back on my life and, my story's a little crazy and we'll get into it in the next episode, but, I remember the times where I had my focus on him and how my life was in comparison to the times where my focus was not on him and where it went.
Yeah.
So I totally resonate with that. And honestly, just for me personally, as your friend, and I've known you for so long, I can personally see it too. You've always been an amazing guy though, bro. Like truly, like not even trying to fluff just because we're on camera or anything like that. You've never been like the type of guy where I was like, Tim, he's okay, but
Right.
you know, you've always had a heart of gold, bro. Always so generous, always so helpful, so funny, so charismatic. Like I truly looked up to you, especially when you brought me on. Like I was like, I want to be like that guy.
Right. Sure.
Like
Thanks.
right off the bat, bro. At 19 years old, I was like, dude, I want to be like this guy. So I mean, that's truth. Like that's facts.
Well,
so yeah, man. I do want to get back to the business because, like I said,
Yeah,
it's just so much knowledge and experience that you've had with it. So what, as far as Clearview Builders right now, kind of talk about what you guys do, what industry you're in, what kind of work you guys do, and if you could mention some of the numbers that you deal with on a daily basis or on a monthly basis.
So now once we started transitioning to industrial, we're doing a lot more heavy equipment.
Okay.
So I'm running excavators, skid steers, loaders. So that's changed.
Can you talk about how you got into industrial, like that transition? Where did that happen? What happened?
Yeah.
there?
So I had a friend who I still work with today. He owns A&R Welding.
Okay.
And Rockstar. And he ended up, he kind of had a falling out with a previous business partner of his. And so he came to me and said, hey, can I use your contractor's license? And can I get your company approved at CEMEX to kind of start working?
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So we tried to, get my company approved. And thank God we were able to get it approved relatively quickly.
Nice.
And so we got it approved. And then he started doing projects under my license. And then we came up with an agreement of like what I get at a percentage of projects and stuff like that. And so it's something we both were comfortable with. I never really thought I would be there. I never really, because most of it was like welding and stuff that he was doing.
Yeah.
So then CEMEX comes to us and says, hey, what else do you guys do? What else does Clearview do? And so we're like, oh, shoot, we kind of do anything.
Yeah.
And at the time we're doing really high-end residential.
Right.
And we had some pretty big projects going on. So we kind of were like, we're already involved with like pretty big projects.
Yeah.
So, we don't really know what this is about, but, we'll give it a try. We'll see what they got. And so they had us doing small projects, like, hey, go dig this hole, go, we need to explore this area and find out what's underground. We need to build this small little structure. So we were doing just little projects for them, and it was cool. We're enjoying that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we got this tunnel project we want you to build. And so it was rebuilding a tunnel. And so we submitted our bid for that and we ended up getting it.
Yeah.
So that was our first big project,
What did that contract end up paying out, or what was
that was about a $750,000 project.
Okay.
And it was probably I think it took us about 6 months to do it.
Okay.
And really fun project. I've never rebuilt a tunnel before, and it's electrical conduit tunnel. So there was like power of 4160 volts going through this thing. So it's like any mistakes, constantly having to tarp it when it's raining, and running big excavators. And again, I've always ran the equipment, but not to like the scale and the just the daily and critical spaces, like really tight spaces.
Right.
So it was definitely a learning curve,
I bet.
but I ran all that stuff and I was pretty comfortable, just again, self-taught, and I never had anyone teach me how to drive this stuff. And so just driving all these big pieces of equipment, just self-taught it all. And so we did all that and paid pretty well. And then we went on, and that now they give us big projects. We got couple multi-million-dollar projects. We got some, there's always small projects, but I mean, I think this year alone we've submitted like 50 estimates.
Okay.
And, I think we'll get most of them.
Yeah.
We really have a good relationship with them. They're a great company. I really enjoy working with everybody from there. They're a Mexican company.
Okay.
And so their headquarters out of Mexico, and everybody that I work with, they're just it's well run.
Yeah.
They communicate well. They pay well. They pay on time. And they're definitely strict.
Yeah.
If you're driving in there without your seatbelt, I mean, you will literally get fired. You get kicked off the plant.
Yeah.
Right then.
Wow.
There's a bunch of regulations you got to follow, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth it. And now we don't ever want to go back to residential.
Yeah.
This is work that is, I don't know. It just feels very professional.
Yeah.
Again, when I look at residential, I kind of felt like that was, I mean, again, there's a profession to it, but it's very lax. Like I would wear shorts and flip flops or Crocs to work.
Right.
You know what I mean? Throw on some tennis shoes and we'll be framing a house or doing tile, you know, no hard hats, no nothing. This is like, I mean, I got a whole outfit. I got a whole, you know, we got company names on the trucks. We got, you know, we got tractors we own now. We got trailers. We got massive amount of equipment. I mean, it is a completely different. Yeah. I feel like we're a real construction company.
Right. Yeah.
And that company really has brought us to this point, you know, by doing this. Where before it was kind of like we're making good money.
Yeah.
You know, decent money, but not where we felt like we're an actual construction company.
Gotcha.
It's been a completely game changer.
Yeah.
And it's really upped all of our game. And then my business partner, he mostly does all of the bidding, deals with the financing, payrolls, all those things. And then I'm more the field guy. And then we do flips still on the side.
Right.
We have a bunch of rental properties.
How many rental properties do you guys have now?
I think we have 13 doors, 14 doors.
Okay.
And I think that's involved with like eight buildings.
Who manages that? Him or you?
Yeah, we manage it. Yeah, both of us.
Okay.
So he mostly does the property management, but any repairs and stuff like that, like I'll usually run those.
For those that don't know, because I know, you know, flips and rentals are a big business, obviously in real estate, and there's probably hundreds of thousands of people that are either trying to get into that or are into that. What would you say for those people? Like, what are some tips or some, you know, pointers that you might be able to offer in regards to like how to manage multiple properties? What's it like managing multiple properties? Is it more of a headache rather than a benefit? Like, talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, as a business owner, we don't really have retirements, so that's really going to be looking at as our retirements.
Okay.
And I would say, you know, again, me and Brad are two guys that we're not scared of the work. And we want to do the work.
Yeah.
So we don't really want to, you know, give it out to other people.
Yeah.
At least not at this point.
Right.
You know, we're both very capable men. And so giving it away just so we can have more time. I mean, we're both, you know, like the work.
Yeah.
Which is why it's kind of hard to like give it away when you actually like doing it.
Right.
You know, and why give it away? You might as well just do it yourself when you like to do it. So I think just people who are willing to like learn. We're both been extremely self-taught people.
Yeah.
If we have a problem on a city where you know, you buy a piece of property and come to find out there is, you know, there's a problem with the property and it's not buildable or something like that.
Right.
It's like, great. Like there was a clear title and now we spent $250,000 on it and now there's a problem and we can't build on it.
Right.
So it's kind of like, well, figure it out.
Yeah.
Like go to the city,
Yeah.
call this person, call that person. You know, like you can't just rely on other people to do anything for you. No one's going to call an engineer, call that, that civil engineer, see what else we could do. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do, but you got to just figure it out. And so, and being competent enough to like think outside the box, like what other things can we do with this property? Can we just make it a storage yard instead of that? Can we, you know, what are the other values we can do on it? Right. And so we're both been very competent when it comes to that. Right. So I think people who are competent will figure it out.
Yeah.
I think people who are scared and people who don't really, you know, people go read books and follow gurus and all this other stuff. Man, either you're going to do it or you're not. And so if you're going to be a doer, just go do it. And you don't need so many people. Everyone can tell you no. And if you accept their no, then the answer is no.
Right.
You know, that's kind of how it goes. Right. And if you're one of those who's kind of like, I accept your no, but I also need to figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, cause this is a problem for me.
Right.
You're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you're not going to make excuses for it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And either way, you're going to learn from it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're going to learn whether, okay, I don't want to buy those properties again.
Right.
Or, you know, or, oh, do you know what? I want to buy these properties because nobody else wants them.
Right.
And I know how to navigate that property and those problems that property is going to have.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of these are all possible outcomes. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to be able to like roll with the punches as they come.
Yeah.
And I think as a business owner, that's what everyone has to do. There's going to be struggles.
Adapt.
You know, you got to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
And as you adapt, you learn.
Right.
And every problem that comes up, every day there's a problem.
Of course.
Every single day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing as a business owner. You're just putting out fires.
Right.
whether you have a problem with an employee that doesn't get along with this guy, you got, a city inspector that's a jerk and he's calling you on stuff that you've never heard of in 20 years of construction. And you're just like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And, but you have to be able to communicate with these guys. You got to be able to flow with them. You got to be able to, same with clients. They're wanting ridiculous levels of perfection, and you're just like, this is not possible. Like, there's no such thing as perfect in construction. I mean, it's not the standard, there's a construction standard and we kind of live up to that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of with everything,
Of course, yeah.
but you get these people with unreasonable expectations.
Yeah.
And then they're expecting something that's just like, I can't spend 2 weeks on your little problem.
What's that saying? You can have it 3 ways. You can either have it
fast, good,
or
cheap.
Yeah. You can only pick 2 though.
Yes.
If it's cheap and good, it's not gonna be fast.
Yes.
If it's fast and good, it's not gonna be cheap. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great comment. And it's a great way to.
I mean, I think it's like meant for the construction.
Oh,
world.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. And I think we pride ourselves in. Before, I think when you're starting out, you should focus on being cheap.
Yeah.
And trying to get your name out there. Mm-hmm. And as you grow, I think the goal absolutely is being good first.
Yeah.
And then after that, probably being fast and then cheap. So good and fast are probably, I would say, the most valuable.
Okay. In the beginning.
Yeah. No, I would say at the end.
Okay.
I mean, I would say once you hit your stride.
Okay.
Once you feel like you are competent in your industry, I think being cheap is not a good thing.
No. Yeah.
No. And it's hard for people to kind of get out of that mentality because that's what got you there. Mm-hmm. So there's a transition of like because I think if you're starting, be cheap. Be cheap because you got to get your foot in the doors.
Yeah.
You got to get the experience.
Right.
Even today, like there's so much about construction I have no idea about.
Really?
I mean, bro, there's 1,000 things you don't know
Yeah.
about. There's way more about in construction that I don't know that I know.
Wow.
And I've been doing it, feel like my whole life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I know a lot, but there's still so many things I don't know. Right. And so being aware of that you don't know everything. Yeah. And so I'm always using everything to learn or get better. And maybe I have learned it before, but I forget it because in doing what I do, in doing so many different trades, I might do something this year and not repeat that trade for 4 more years. So when that 4-year comes, I'm gonna have to relearn that whole thing again. I might know the basic concepts of it, but I don't know the details of it that are like what makes that actually be efficient, be profitable.
Right.
Like I don't know the ins and outs of that individual trade.
Right.
So I kind of have to, spend a little bit of time researching that trade again, being like, oh yeah, okay, there's, I got to get these parts and I got to get that tool and I got to get these things. And and this industry's changed and the parts are different now. So now we got to, adjust to all those things. And so again, going and being able to adapt to all those things. But being good is probably going to be the thing that being cheap and good and maybe slow is what you'd want to start with. But I would say probably always be good.
Okay.
Always do a good job. Always give good customer service. Always be a man of your word. All the typical good business things. Maybe you're going to be slow though, or but you definitely be cheap at first.
Right.
And then switch the cheap and the fast.
Yeah.
And start being fast and start being expensive.
Now, speaking of tips, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on it because there's a couple more questions I want to ask before we wrap up. Any tips on picking properties for rental projects? Like any tips that you could share with the audience as far as like,
I mean, I would say
this is what I look for when I want to pick something out, or it's a good investment.
Sure. I would say definitely pick something that you're capable of. If you're going to be, again, my forte is doing the work yourself. Okay. So if you're telling me like, I want to buy something and then hire a contractor and do all this stuff, I mean, needle in a haystack, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you got to get timing. If you got all the money in the world, I mean, I have clients that had like, hey, I just got $12 million and they get into projects and they just lose their ass because they're trying to hire everything out. They're trying to make this big, beautiful thing. They have no idea how the industry works.
Yeah.
They didn't research what this property is going to look like and the amount of money it's going to cost to like fix it up. Then the holding costs of all the money, the purchase price, holding costs, construction costs, all the delays from the cities, all these things are going to happen. And then turn around and sell it. It is a needle in a haystack to find something after you get through all that and you're going to turn a profit.
Wow.
Right. It's very, very difficult. So again, we've been able to turn a profit relatively easy because we've pretty much done everything in house. We'll take all the commissions on when we buy the property because we're the real estate agent when we buy the property.
Right.
We're the real estate agent when we sell the property. We are the contractor doing all the construction throughout it. And I'm actually in there getting dirty, trying to figuring out ways to like make it, design it in a way that it's going to sell.
Yeah.
We'll do our own staging. We'll do our own landscaping. We pretty much make it something very nice. So with that being said, and if you're willing to learn all those trades and do all those things, then you're able to save a ton of money.
Right.
And you're actually able to make things that are non-profitable profitable.
Wow.
So we are, I think, extremely unique in that regard.
Yeah.
That we've been able to do that. But with that being said, we're stuck with, we can't handle that many projects at the same time. Right. So a lot of these big flippers will be doing 20, 30 flips at one time. And so they'll make more money than us, but they're doing a lot more work than us. And they might lose on 5 and win on 10. So they're actually, it's okay because they're actually winning on 5, you know what I mean? But it's, we don't like to lose on any project.
Is it just because you feel like those big flippers, they have just more personnel dedicated to the work or?
Again, they're going to sub out.
Oh, okay.
They're going to sub out.
Okay.
And they're, I guess, a little bit more, but see, we've found, again, me and Brad have both lost our ass on properties. And so we refuse to over leverage ourselves where we're going to lose on any project.
Okay.
So if we break even, I don't care if we work an entire year. I don't care what we do. If we lose, we're very unhappy. If we break even, that is not a loss.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like a push.
I'll take a push all day.
100%.
All
as long as I'm not losing money, I'm
all
happy.
day.
Yeah.
And we've had our losses.
Right.
We built a garage for a guy in Newport a couple of years ago, probably 6 years ago now. We end up losing 40 grand on that.
Wow.
So basically, I took 5 months of my life to build a guy. I paid $40,000. I paid $40,000 to build him a garage, and in addition to his house.
Oh my God.
And those are things where you're just like, son of a.
Yeah.
That's part of it though.
Right.
And so those are very rare that we have that happen. But they do happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
is it just like for you, is it one of those things like it's a part of the construction game?
it is,
Yeah.
and it's a part of the learning phases of it. I would rather even to this day, that guy is giving me referrals to like build something for his neighbor.
Okay.
And we're turning that down, not because we would love to do it, but not because of that, but we're just not in that industry anymore.
Right.
We're in the industrial industry and we're just really not messing with the residential game anymore.
Yeah.
The residential game is, we lost our ass on that little project, and it takes a ton of work to know all those trades and do all those things. Industrial, we're running heavy equipment. Most of it's concrete work.
Right.
It's big industrial type projects.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 300-400 feet of like cable trays that are 50 feet off the ground that we're running cranes with, and we're running gradles with, and we're running big heavy equipment. And, we're up on boom lifts and we have harnesses and, it's like
big time work.
Real construction. Yeah. It's like real construction and a lot of iron work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, but we can get a lot better at that by, focusing on smaller amounts of trades compared to doing all the different trades, learning all the different things. And in the residential game, there's so much competition.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people illegal working.
Yeah.
So that drives the price way, 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 way down.
Right.
And in this, you can't be that. Everyone has to be absolutely legit.
Right.
And so it holds the bar very high, where everyone has to be legit. So the competition is like, okay, we're all competing in a legit way for these individual projects.
Like fair commerce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the residential game, especially in California, bro, it is not that way. No. It is all completely saturated with illegal contractors, handymen, just people who have, and then you look at these projects and they are garbage. Everyone's doing illegal ADUs or illegal this, or illegal that. And it's very hard to compete against that. Right. You almost have to be that yourself to compete.
Right.
Okay, I wanna finish off with 2 questions. The first one's gonna be, what's one myth about success or entrepreneurship? Sorry, that you wish more people understood.
I would say there's no such thing as passive income.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, you're not just gonna buy a rental property and then you're gonna like collect a check and then you're out in Hawaii and you're just collecting cash.
Okay.
Like, that just doesn't exist.
Okay.
That project requires maintenance. You're dealing with people, so there's constantly problems at that property, whether they're not paying rent on time or.
So the term passive income is kind of an illusion, because there's gonna be some work involved with making
1,000%.
Yeah. So it's more like active income.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So you just have a job.
Yeah.
You create a job for yourself. Right. And it's, there's, I would say that is probably number one.
Like that. You're very right.
You have to everything's going to take work.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything takes work. Another myth, huh? I don't know. I mean, it's a myth about entrepreneurship.
Like, what? So what's one myth about success or entrepreneurship that you wish more people understood?
Yeah, it sounds so cliche because everyone says it. Like, money isn't everything.
Yeah.
All those type of things.
It's cliche I'm such a big believer in
it's
cliches.
Just, I know.
It's just I think people think it's too simple, or it's just so like mundane that they don't even pay it any mind. But it's like, those are facts.
Yes,
like these are proven through the the mankind's history.
Yes,
like these things have been consistent because they're the reality is
Absolutely.
they're just true.
Absolutely.
So it's like, why not embrace them?
I would definitely say health is everything.
Yeah,
health is everything. I've had some health scares throughout my life, and as I'm getting older, and it's definitely like, man, when that happens, nothing matters.
Right.
Nothing matters.
Yeah.
And so even with health of family members, nothing else matters, and money does not repair those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would say those things with success is just keeping your eye on the things that really matter.
Right.
And the things that matter, I think, are like, for one, having a relationship with God,
100%.
Being able to control your mind and control, what your reactions to things.
Yeah.
And also, your health. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
About something else.
Okay.
I would say just spirituality.
Yeah.
Keeping a relationship with God.
Right.
And keeping your health healthy.
Okay.
So, in construction, it's one of those things like, dude, I want to eat bad all the time. You want to binge eat, especially after a long day.
Yeah.
So really trying to keep that on point where your health is.
It's like a job in itself, with that job being what it is. Yeah. Yes. I can only imagine.
Trying to eat healthy meals, bring healthy meals,
right.
Make time for the gym,
right.
All those type of things are extremely important.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Now, last question, and then we got to give a little shout out to our partners and sponsors out in the HD. But looking back at where you started, what does it feel like now to be where you are currently? To that contrast from direct, what was it called? Digital direct to now multi-million-dollar construction company doing industrial work.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I think the biggest thing about it is it's just being a competent man.
Yeah.
Before I was kind of a energetic kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really how I felt. I felt that for a long, long time.
Okay.
I probably felt that until I was probably 40.
Yeah.
I felt like I was a very energetic, hardworking kid.
Yeah.
And in my 40s now, and in the industry that I'm working, I definitely have felt more like a man and more competent.
Yeah.
It's just being able to kind of put everything together.
Yeah.
You know, everything we've learned, all the mistakes that I've learned, all of the things that I used to value, and really, really wean out the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Focus and double, triple down on things that do matter.
Right.
I think that's been huge.
Yeah.
So yeah, feeling like competent
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of confidence comes from.
Right.
And I think that's part of the issue a lot of people feel when they don't find authenticity
Yeah.
is they're faking it.
Right.
They're trying to fake being whatever they're trying to be.
Right.
If you are actually authentic, you are going to be confident
Yeah.
because you don't need to fake anything. You don't need to pretend.
Right.
I could go on to any construction site at this point and be very competent
Yeah.
in my skills and in my knowledge of what we're talking about.
Right.
Again, humble enough to know that I'm not going to know a certain things, competent enough that if I don't know it, I could figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's been huge.
It's like having the confidence compared to cockiness.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cockiness is ridiculous.
Right.
It's all fake.
Yeah.
It's like, it works at first and you might trick a few people,
Right.
but in time it all gets exposed.
Yeah.
It just cockiness just doesn't get you anywhere.
The truth always comes out.
It does, no matter what. It always comes out. And so, being competent is, I would say, the number one thing to be in any industry.
Bars.
And that just is with whatever project you're doing, whatever endeavor you're doing. And that goes for everything. It goes for relationships. It goes for parenting. It goes for, friendships. It goes for everything. Being competent and like being self-aware.
Yeah.
What your limitations are,
Right.
what your abilities are. And again, the more competent you are, the more you realize that you don't know everything, but you're competent enough to understand, like, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
I figured out the other 50, 100 things.
Right.
So why can't I figure this out?
Exactly.
And if you have figured those out, you can figure the next things out.
100%.
So that's been, a huge thing in, I think, the level of competences we have now.
Yeah.
And I think that shows when we deal with clients now.
Right.
I think that shows when we deal with even employees and projects that we get into.
Yeah.
It shows.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty cool.
Well, Tim, I mean, a wealth of knowledge. If you guys weren't paying attention, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I mean,
Getting
just
after it.
light years of information. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and doing this, bro. I can't wait to keep doing this
it's gonna
with
be rad.
you.
We're very excited.
Before we wrap up, though, today's first ever Clear Views podcast episode, we got to show some love to the businesses that support the movement and help keep this vision alive. So first off, we want to say thank you to Pokey Haven.
Hey.
Big shout out to Pokey Haven.
today.
Mark, Olivia,
delicious.
Sylvia. Where fresh meets fire. If you're craving the next level Poke Bowls, this is the spot. Local, flavorful, and always on point. Tell them Clearview sent you.
Tell them.
Next, we want to give a major shout out to IV Station in Apple Valley, led by Dr. Abdul Kamle, doing amazing things. I'm actually a patient there. He's changing lives through science and self-care, whether you're looking to shed weight, boost energy with NAD therapy, or level up with testosterone therapy, TRT. IV Station is the move for sure, 100%. I actually get TRT and NAD there, and it's absolutely changed my life. So if you're not doing it, you're not living. And by the way, NAD, I don't know if you know about this, but have you heard about NAD?
Not enough, no.
So
Just
I
from
guess it's like all the celebrities and all the athletes are taking it. It's like a kind of like a fountain of youth thing. So
Sweet.
HD, you have it at your disposal. It's just up to you whether you want to take advantage of it or not.
Very cool.
And then second last, we also got Contigo Pharmacy, locally owned as well, community driven, always looking out for their patients from prescriptions to personalized care. Contigo makes sure you're good, real service, real people. And then last but not least, shout out to Best Opportunities in Hesperia. They're helping empower lives through service, support, and opportunity. If you're looking to grow, level up, or connect with resources, Best Opportunities out there doing real work. I know the CEO there. She's amazing. She actually grew that company from 1 location to 3 now, and they're doing like insane. So
That's awesome.
really, really cool. But yeah, we just want to say thank you to all those partners and sponsors that we are linked up with. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe. Support those that support the culture, man. Much love to the partners. Now let's keep it building. This is Clear Views Podcast. We'll catch y'all next time.